Chapter 8, Conversation with Caroline. Just forget those girls, Jake growled. Every time we get mixed up with the Malloys, we get in trouble. You can't exactly forget Eddie if she's playing on your team. Don't remind me. All I'm going to think about from now till school's out is baseball. I could be your ball boy, said Peter. Every time you miss a ball, I could pick it up for you. That's the catcher's job, Peter. Well, I could be your water boy then. Every time you come off the field, I could give you a drink of water. All I need is for you guys to be there on the bleachers cheering every time the Buckman Badgers make a run. You can even cheer for Eddie. What I don't want is to get in some kind of trouble and get kicked off the team. That's why I'm not getting near the Malloys if I can help it. What Jake was talking about, of course, was the story that had appeared in the newspaper that morning about the dramatic rescue of Caroline Malloy. How the brave Hatford boys and the courageous Malloy sisters had linked arms and caught the youngest Malloy girl as she came down the river on the far side of Island Avenue. There was no photo, but all the kids had their names in the paper as though they were heroes. Their parents didn't quite see it that way, however. The darn most foolish harebrained stunt I ever saw, Mr. Hatford had fumed. How you kids managed to keep a bottle race a major event is beyond me. The girls had been grounded for a week, with the exception of school and baseball practice. Coach Malloy had ruefully declared, jokingly of course, that he was going to lock his daughters in the attic to keep them out of trouble. Wally crawled up in the bleachers beside Josh and Peter, while Jake joined the other team members on the field. Sports weren't exactly Wally's thing. If Jake's team won a game, that was fine with Wally. If they lost, that was fine too. Sitting on cold bleachers watching baseball practice, not even a real game, was way, way down on the list of things Wally liked to do. But if he didn't come to practice, he wouldn't be part of the dinner table discussion at night. For Mr. Hatford enjoyed sports very much and liked to hear how practice had gone. If Wally wasn't part of the conversation at all, it was as though he weren't even there. And being the middle child in the family, he did not want to be ignored any more than he already was. Look who's here, Josh said, elbowing Wally. There, way down at the end of the bleachers, sat Caroline and Beth, who had come to watch Eddie practice. The coach liked to have a cheering section during practice, he had told his team. He said it got players used to the hooting and hollering that went on during a real game. In fact, the coach seemed to do enough hooting and hollering all on his own, Wally thought. Okay, players, look here, Coach Malloy called out. When you catch a ball, catch it right here in the upper palm, not in the web of your glove. Wally leaned back until his head rested on the riser behind him, the clouds swirling around. He imagined himself a giant, stepping from cloud to cloud, looking down on the earth below. Josh elbowed him. Come on, Wally, pay attention. We're supposed to be cheering the team. Wally sighed and slowly pulled himself up to a sitting position. Far down the bleachers, he could see that Caroline, too, was sprawled out on her back and watching the clouds. Who invented the ball anyway, Wally wondered. Football, basketball, baseball, softball, volleyball, kickball, dodgeball, tennis ball, golf, ping pong. He always read what a great invention the wheel had been, but what about the ball? Who got the credit for that? Wally, are you watching or what? Josh said. I'm watching. I'm paying attention, said Peter. Wally snapped to and studied the field below. Now the coach was explaining how to field a ground ball. Wally yawned. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Caroline crawling along the bleachers toward him. She got halfway between the place where Beth was sitting and the place where the Hatford boys were sitting, and then motioned for Wally to come over. Wally considered it. If he did, he would probably get into trouble. If he didn't, she'd probably crawl all the way over and drop things down the back of his shirt. Somehow, though, even talking to Caroline Malloy seemed more interesting than sitting here waiting to cheer for someone. I'm going over and sit with Caroline for a while, Wally said. You're nuts! No, Peter, you stay here. We're supposed to be rooting for Jake. Peter stayed put. Wally stepped behind Josh and Peter and walked over to the middle of the bleachers, while Caroline was still crawling on her hands and knees. What are you, a dog? He said. I'm bored, she told him. Me too. That's probably because we're not very good at sports. Dad says that people who are good in sports don't get bored with them. It's people like us who would rather be up on a stage who get bored during ball games. This isn't even a game. It's practice. And I don't want to be up on stage either, said Wally. Caroline seemed to be thinking that over. Then what would you rather be doing? Nothing. I just like to think. Everyone thinks all the time, Wally. You don't have to sit and do nothing in order to think. Well, I have my best thoughts when I do, Wally answered. Caroline leaned closer until she was within a few inches of his face. What kind of thoughts do you have, Wally? I really want to know. She sounded as though she meant it. Out on the field, the coach was yelling, "Keep your bat as still as possible till you're ready to swing. Don't wave it back and forth." Wally sighed. He was glad it wasn't him down there on the ball diamond getting yelled at over a ball. Well, he said finally, things like how it would feel to be a giant walking from cloud to cloud. Or, well, you know how if you watch ants building an anthill and taking food inside and all that, they don't even know you're there, right? Right. If you pick a stick in their way, they'll crawl over it or around it, but they don't know how it got there. They don't know that your shoe has a foot in it. They don't know anything about people or bridges or rockets or anything. All they know is their own little anthill. Caroline seemed absorbed in what he was saying. What if we're like ants to some huge creatures we can't even see? What if our world is like a small anthill and huge scientists are studying us under a microscope like germs or something? He looked directly at Caroline as he asked the question. He really wanted to know if anyone else ever had the same thoughts he did. Caroline seemed deep in concentration as she studied his face. "Did you know that your eyes have little brown specks in them?" she asked. Wally let out his breath and tipped back his head. He should have known better than to tell anything like that to Caroline. But just then, when he had decided she was hopeless, she said, "I think about things like that too sometimes." "Like what?" "Like, what if every person who ever lived leaves this sort of ghost behind, and if conditions are absolutely exactly right, you can feel what that person was feeling when they died. For just a minute, maybe you can sort of be that ghost." Like, what do you mean?" asked Wally. "Let's say that the baseball diamond was once a battlefield in the Civil War, and soldiers died right down there. And if either Eddie or Jake was standing in the exact spot, in the exact position, at the exact time, on the exact day of the year that a soldier was killed, it would be as though Eddie or Jake was right there with him in the war." That was an interesting thought, Wally decided. Of course, the odds of something like that happening would be 1 in a billion, which was why people didn't see ghosts more often. But maybe it could happen. Maybe Caroline was precocious after all. And if you were that person standing where the soldier was killed, you could feel what he felt. But then, when a minute was over, you would be yourself again, but you'd know exactly what it felt like to be a Civil War soldier and to be scared. "Grip the ball with your thumb on the bottom, Eddie," the coach was shouting. "Not the side. Let's see that pitch again." "Wally," said Caroline, "do you think we could ever be best friends?" "Nope," said Wally. "Why not?" "It's like apples and oranges. We're too different." "Because you're a boy and I'm a girl?" "No, because you're really weird sometimes. And you're not. I'm just weird in a different way." "Well, we could be friends, even if we're not best friends, couldn't we?" "I don't know," said Wally. "I'll think about it." Chapter 9 is Letter to Georgia.